You think you know who to trust at work, but the people who seem most grateful for your help might be the ones planning to step on you to reach the top. This isn't a cynical worldview. It's a harsh reality that millions of professionals discover too late, usually after they've already been used as stepping stones by someone they genuinely tried to help. The veteran cashier knew that the first days at any job can define a person's entire trajectory in that professional environment. When he saw that young woman arriving timidly, with her eyes lost among the shelves and nervousness written all over her face, something inside him awakened that genuine desire to help. It wasn't pity, but rather the recognition of someone who had already been through those same uncertain moments when trust in a new workplace feels like a distant dream. He approached her with the naturalness of someone who understands that small gestures can transform someone's entire experience, and without hesitation, he began introducing each colleague with care and attention. The way he presented the cafeteria, explained the unwritten rules, and even shared insights about the manager's personality, revealed a rare quality in professional environments: authentic generosity. That lealtad to helping newcomers wasn't just professional courtesy, but a demonstration of character that would soon be tested in ways he never imagined. She looked at him with those sincere eyes and said words that would echo in his mind for months. "You made my first day not feel like a disaster." There was something profound in that gratitude, a recognition that went beyond simple politeness and touched the essence of human connection in professional spaces. He felt that warm satisfaction that comes from knowing you've made a real difference in someone's life, that feeling of having planted a seed of confianza in hostile ground. Throughout that week, he continued to be her anchor in that new ambiente professional, always including her in conversations when others might have ignored the newcomer. When rude customers appeared, he would subtly step in to protect her, and when she showed improvement, he made sure to praise her effort in front of others. His actions were creating an invisible network of support, but also unknowingly, he was building expectations that would soon crumble into frustration and deception. During those 7 days, he watched her gain confidence, saw her smile become more natural, and felt proud of the small role he had played in her adaptation. But what he didn't realize was that his mentorship was teaching her lessons he never intended, lessons about how to identify who had influence, who could open doors, and how to position herself strategically in that professional ecosystem. Sometimes when we extend our hand to help someone climb, we don't realize we're also showing them exactly which ladder leads to the top. The 7th day arrived with a routine that felt almost comfortable, but life has a way of revealing truths when we least expect them. When the district manager appeared for one of his surprise visits, the veteran cashier was focused on his duties, unaware that the foundations of his recent generosity were about to be shaken in a way that would change his understanding of workplace relationships forever. He moved through the store with the confidence of someone who knew every corner, every procedure, every person, or so he thought. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the aisles as he headed toward the back stock room, perhaps looking for some item or checking inventory. What he found there would become one of those moments that divide life into before and after, when the comfortable narrative we tell ourselves about people and situations suddenly shatters like glass hitting concrete. The image that greeted him was so unexpected, so contrary to everything he believed he knew about the situation, that his mind took several seconds to process what his eyes were seeing. There they were, in the back of the stockroom, she and the district manager, locked in an embrace that spoke of intimacy and complicity, that went far beyond any professional relationship. She kissed him as if no one else existed in the world, with a passion and confidence that seemed to belong to a completely different person from the timid newcomer he had helped just days before. The veteran cashier froze, feeling as if time had stopped and reality had shifted beneath his feet. He stood there for a moment that felt like an eternity, watching a scene that rewrote everything he thought he understood about generosity, trust, and the true nature of professional relationships. That moment of Trayson wasn't just about her actions, but about the collapse of his naive belief that good intentions are always met with good intentions in return. He returned to the cash register as if nothing had happened, his face a mask of professional composure, while inside, a storm of emotions raged in complete silencio. The mechanical movements of scanning items, counting change, and greeting customers became a refuge from the chaos of thoughts consuming his mind. A colleague approached and whispered with the knowing smile of someone who had seen this play out before. "She's not foolish. She's already climbed 2 steps in 7 days." Those words hit him like a punch to the stomach, confirming what he was trying to deny to himself. The next day, she arrived smiling as always, but now that smile carried a different meaning, and when she greeted him, he simply said, "I introduced you to everyone, except the part that hurts." Months later, she was transferred, the district manager disappeared, and the veteran cashier was promoted to assistant manager. When asked about his secret, he replied with the wisdom that only comes from profound apprendizado through pain. Start by helping, but learn when to stop. That superação taught him that in professional environments, the greatest victory isn't always helping others climb, but knowing when to protect your own position and recognize the difference between genuine gratitude and strategic manipulation. The gratitude in her eyes seemed so genuine that it pierced through all the professional barriers he had carefully constructed over years of working in that ambiente professional. When she said those words, "You made my first day not feel like a disaster," there was a vulnerability in her voice that awakened something protective in him, something that went beyond mere workplace courtesy. He had seen many new employees come and go, but rarely had he encountered someone who expressed appreciation with such apparent sincerity and depth. That moment of connection felt real, authentic, like a bridge of confianza being built between 2 people who understood the challenges of navigating corporate hierarchies and unspoken rules. The way she looked at him, with those eyes that seemed to hold genuine relief and recognition, made him believe he had found someone who truly valued kindness, in a world often marked by competition and indifference. What he didn't realize was that he was witnessing a masterclass in emotional manipulation, where authentic-seeming gratitude becomes a powerful tool for opening doors and hearts. Her words echoed in his mind throughout the following days, reinforcing his decision to continue being her mentor and protector in that complex professional environment. Every time he saw her struggling with a difficult task or dealing with an impatient customer, he remembered that moment of vulnerable gratitude and felt compelled to intervene. The phrase, "You made my first day not feel like a disaster," became his motivation to ensure that every subsequent day would be equally supportive and encouraging. He began to see himself as her guardian angel in the workplace, the person who could make the difference between her success and failure in that new role. This sense of purpose filled him with satisfaction and reinforced his belief that he was doing something genuinely important and meaningful. However, what he interpreted as the beginning of a mentorship based on mutual respect was actually the first thread in a web of strategic relationships that she was skillfully weaving. The beauty of her gratitude lay not just in the words themselves, but in the perfect timing and context in which they were delivered. She had observed him enough during that first day to understand exactly what kind of person he was. Someone who took pride in helping others, who valued recognition for his good deeds, and who had probably been overlooked for promotions and acknowledgments throughout his career. Her expression of appreciation hit precisely the emotional note that would resonate most deeply with his need to feel valued and important in that professional setting. The phrase about not feeling like a disaster was particularly clever because it positioned him as a hero in her narrative, someone who had saved her from professional embarrassment and failure. This created an emotional debt that made him feel invested in her continued success, turning him into an unwitting ally in her rapid ascension through the company hierarchy. As the days passed, he found himself constantly looking for opportunities to live up to that initial gratitude, to prove that his help had indeed been transformative and valuable. Every small success she achieved felt like a validation of his mentorship. Every smile she gave him seemed like confirmation that their bond was genuine and special. He began to take personal pride in her progress, as if her professional growth was a direct reflection of his guidance and support. The lealtad he felt toward her was based on what he believed was mutual respect and appreciation, but in reality, he was being carefully managed by someone who understood exactly how to maintain his investment in her success. What started as a moment of genuine human connection had become the foundation for a relationship built on carefully calibrated emotional manipulation, though he remained blissfully unaware of the true dynamics at play. The power of that initial expression of gratitude extended far beyond the moment it was spoken, becoming a reference point that influenced every subsequent interaction between them. When she needed his help with complicated procedures, she would reference how much his initial guidance had meant to her. When she wanted him to cover for her mistakes, she would remind him of how he had prevented her first day from being a disaster. Each callback to that moment reinforced the emotional bond he felt, and made him more willing to go out of his way to support her professional journey. She had discovered that genuine-seeming appreciation was like a key that could unlock doors of favor and protection in ways that mere competence or hard work never could. The frustration that would eventually consume him was already being planted in these early moments, though he couldn't see it yet. Her ability to express gratitude in a way that felt both spontaneous and deeply personal revealed a sophisticated understanding of workplace psychology that most people take years to develop. She knew that in professional environments, people rarely receive acknowledgement for small acts of kindness, and that someone who takes the time to recognize and appreciate these gestures immediately stands out as special and worthy of continued investment. The phrase about making her first day not feel like a disaster was perfectly calibrated to make him feel both needed and successful, two powerful motivators that would keep him committed to her welfare. By framing his help as transformative rather than merely helpful, she elevated his role in her story from background player to essential character. This strategic approach to building professional relationships would serve her well in the coming days, though it would ultimately lead to a moment of devastating deception for the man who believed he had found someone who truly valued authentic human connection in the workplace. The tragedy of that moment of gratitude was not that it was false, but that it was strategically deployed as the foundation for a relationship that would ultimately reveal the darker aspects of ambition and professional advancement. He treasured those words because they made him feel valued and important, emotions that had been in short supply throughout his long tenure at the company. What he didn't understand was that her gratitude was not just an expression of appreciation, but also a careful investment in a relationship that she knew would be useful for her professional aspirations. The superasson that would eventually come from this experience would teach him to distinguish between authentic appreciation and strategic emotional manipulation, a skill that would serve him well in future professional relationships. The apprendizado born from this betrayal would be painful, but ultimately valuable, showing him that in the complex world of workplace dynamics, even the most genuine-seeming expressions of gratitude can sometimes mask calculated ambition and self-interest. The veteran employee took his role as her workplace protector with the seriousness of someone who had found a genuine purpose in what had become a routine professional existence. Throughout that transformative week, he made it his mission to ensure she felt included in every conversation, every break-room discussion, and every informal gathering that could help her integrate into the company culture. When colleagues would naturally gravitate toward their established groups, he would gently guide her into the circle, making introductions and finding common ground between her and the other employees. His actions weren't just about basic courtesy. They revealed a deep understanding of how workplace social dynamics can make or break someone's professional experience. The confianza he was building with her felt mutual and authentic, creating what he believed was a foundation for a lasting professional relationship. He watched with satisfaction as her initial nervousness transformed into growing comfort, never suspecting that his protective instincts were being carefully cultivated and manipulated for purposes far beyond simple workplace integration. The way he shielded her from difficult customers became almost instinctive, a reflex born from years of experience dealing with the most challenging aspects of retail work. When an angry customer would raise their voice or make unreasonable demands, he would smoothly step in, using his authority and experience to diffuse the situation while allowing her to observe and learn. These interventions weren't just about protecting her from immediate stress. They were lessons in professional survival, demonstrations of how to handle conflict and maintain dignity under pressure. He took pride in these moments, feeling like a seasoned warrior passing on vital knowledge to a promising apprentice. The lealtad he felt toward her growth was genuine and selfless, rooted in his belief that helping others succeed was one of the most meaningful aspects of his long career. What he didn't realize was that each protective gesture was being cataloged and stored as evidence of his influence and value, information that would later be used in ways he never anticipated. His practice of publicly praising her efforts and improvements created a powerful dynamic that elevated her status among their colleagues, while reinforcing his own position as her mentor and advocate. When she mastered a new procedure or handled a difficult situation well, he would make sure others noticed, highlighting her progress in team meetings and casual conversations. This public recognition served multiple purposes. It boosted her confidence, demonstrated his leadership qualities, and created a narrative of successful mentorship that reflected well on both of them. He genuinely believed he was helping to build her professional reputation and establish her credibility in the ambiente professional. The satisfaction he felt when colleagues acknowledged her improvements seemed to validate his approach and confirm that his investment in her development was paying dividends. However, this public praise was also inadvertently broadcasting to everyone, including upper management, that she was someone worth noticing and potentially promoting. The conversations he included her in were carefully chosen to expose her to different aspects of the business, from operational challenges to customer service strategies to workplace politics. He would share insights about how decisions were made, who held real influence, and what factors contributed to professional advancement within the company. These informal educational sessions were his way of giving her the kind of insider knowledge that typically takes years to acquire through trial and error. He felt like he was providing her with a roadmap to success, sharing the accumulated wisdom of his extensive experience in that particular workplace culture. The trust he placed in her by sharing this sensitive information felt like a natural extension of their growing professional bond. What he didn't consider was that this intelligence about company dynamics and power structures could be used strategically by someone with different motivations than simple professional growth and learning. Each act of inclusion, protection, and promotion created an invisible web of obligation and expectation that bound him emotionally to her professional journey. He began to feel personally invested in her success, as if her achievements were a direct reflection of his mentoring abilities and his value as a senior employee. When she struggled, he felt compelled to help. When she succeeded, he felt proud. When others criticized her, he felt defensive. This emotional investment was creating a relationship dynamic that went far beyond normal workplace collegiality, though he interpreted it as the natural result of good mentorship and genuine care for a colleague's development. The irony was that his genuine desire to help and protect was creating exactly the kind of professional dependency that ambitious individuals learn to leverage for their own advancement. The frustration that was building beneath the surface would eventually explode when he realized that his protective instincts had been expertly manipulated. The week of intensive mentoring and protection created a false sense of security and mutual respect that masked the true nature of their professional relationship. He believed he was teaching her how to navigate workplace challenges with integrity and hard work, while she was actually learning how to identify and utilize people who could accelerate her career advancement. His lessons about customer service, company procedures, and professional behavior were absorbed alongside more strategic insights about who to impress, who to avoid, and who to cultivate as allies. The genuine care he showed for her professional development was being reinterpreted through the lens of someone who saw relationships primarily as stepping stones to higher positions and better opportunities. This fundamental misalignment of intentions and expectations was setting the stage for a revelation that would shatter his faith in workplace relationships and force him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about mentorship, trust, and professional loyalty. The tragic beauty of his week-long investment in her success was that every action was motivated by authentic generosity and genuine belief in the value of helping others succeed. He wasn't expecting anything in return except the satisfaction of knowing he had made a positive difference in someone's professional life and career trajectory. His willingness to share knowledge, provide protection, and offer public support represented the best aspects of workplace culture. Experienced employees taking responsibility for developing newcomers and creating an environment of mutual support and shared success. However, this idealistic approach to professional relationships was about to collide with a much more calculated and strategic mindset, creating a learning experience that would fundamentally change his understanding of trust, ambition, and the complex motivations that drive human behavior in competitive professional environments. The decepção and superação that would follow this revelation would ultimately lead to valuable aprendizado about the importance of discernment and the need to balance generosity with self-protection in workplace relationships. The seventh day arrived with the comfortable rhythm of established routine, and the veteran cashier moved through his duties with the satisfaction of someone who believed he had successfully guided a newcomer through her most challenging professional transition. The distrito manager's surprise visit was nothing unusual. These periodic inspections were part of the corporate culture, moments when upper management would appear unexpectedly to observe operations and ensure standards were being maintained. He had witnessed dozens of these visits over the years, and they had become just another aspect of the professional landscape he navigated with practiced ease. What made this particular visit different wasn't the timing or the circumstances, but the devastating revelation that was waiting to unfold in the most unexpected corner of their workplace. The confianza he had built over the past week, both in his mentoring abilities and in his understanding of the people around him, was about to be shattered in a way that would redefine his entire perspective on professional relationships and human nature. As he made his way through the familiar aisles of the store, his mind was probably occupied with routine concerns, inventory levels, customer service standards, the progress of his newest protege. These normal preoccupations created a false sense of security, a comfortable bubble of predictability that made what he was about to discover even more shocking and disorienting. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the store as he headed toward the back stockroom, perhaps looking for supplies or checking on some operational detail that required his attention. There was nothing in his demeanor or expectations that suggested he was walking toward a moment that would fundamentally alter his understanding of workplace dynamics and personal relationships. The ambiente professional that had felt so familiar and manageable just moments before was about to reveal hidden complexities and betrayals that he had never imagined could exist beneath the surface of his daily routine. The image that greeted him in the back of the stockroom was so contrary to everything he believed about the situation that his mind struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. There she was, the timid newcomer he had so carefully mentored and protected, locked in an intimate embrace with the district manager, kissing him with a passion and confidence that seemed to belong to an entirely different person. The contrast between the vulnerable, grateful woman he thought he knew and this assertive, strategic individual was so stark that it took several seconds for reality to register. This wasn't a moment of spontaneous attraction or workplace romance gone wrong. The comfort and familiarity of their interaction suggested a relationship that had been established long before her arrival at the store. The realization that his week of careful mentoring had been based on a completely false understanding of who she was and what she was trying to accomplish hit him like a physical blow. The way she kissed the district manager revealed layers of deception that went far beyond simple workplace dishonesty. It spoke to a calculated strategy that had been in motion from the moment she walked through the door. Her performance as the nervous, grateful newcomer had been exactly that. A performance designed to identify and cultivate the people who could be useful to her rapid advancement through the company hierarchy. The veteran cashier realized that while he had been teaching her about customer service and company procedures, she had been conducting her own education in workplace politics and strategic relationship building. Every moment of gratitude, every expression of vulnerability, every request for help had been carefully calibrated to create exactly the kind of protective relationship that would serve her professional ambitions. The traição he was witnessing wasn't just personal, it was a masterclass in workplace manipulation that had played out right under his nose. The intimate scene before him represented the collapse of every assumption he had made about mentorship, trust, and the nature of professional relationships in their workplace environment. He had believed he was helping someone navigate the challenges of a new job, when in reality, he had been unknowingly facilitating a strategic advancement that had been planned and orchestrated from the beginning. The district manager's participation in this deception added another layer of betrayal. someone in a position of authority had been complicit in manipulating the genuine goodwill of subordinate employees. This wasn't just about romantic relationships or workplace politics. It was about the systematic exploitation of trust and generosity for personal gain. The lealtad he had felt toward her development and success now felt like naive foolishness, and the pride he had taken in his mentoring abilities was transformed into frustration and self-doubt. Standing there in shocked silence, the veteran cashier experienced what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that occurs when reality contradicts our deeply held beliefs and expectations. The woman he thought he knew had never really existed. She had been a carefully constructed persona, designed to achieve specific professional objectives. His genuine desire to help and protect had been identified, targeted, and exploited with surgical precision. The comfortable narrative he had constructed about their relationship, mentor and grateful apprentice working together toward shared goals, crumbled in that moment, replaced by the harsh reality of strategic manipulation and calculated advancement. This revelation would force him to question not just this particular relationship, but his entire approach to workplace interactions and his ability to accurately judge people's motivations and character. The frozen moment of recognition stretched endlessly as his mind processed the implications of what he was seeing and understanding. This wasn't just about discovering a secret relationship. It was about realizing that his entire worldview regarding professional relationships had been built on assumptions that were fundamentally flawed. The kindness and generosity he had shown weren't being reciprocated or appreciated. They were being exploited as tools in someone else's career advancement strategy. The deception he felt was profound, because it attacked his core beliefs about human nature and the value of helping others succeed. Yet within this devastating moment of betrayal lay the seeds of important apprendizado, lessons about discernment, self-protection, and the complex motivations that drive human behavior in competitive professional environments. The super-assume that would eventually emerge from this experience would make him wiser, more strategic, and ultimately more successful in navigating the treacherous waters of workplace relationships and corporate advancement. The veteran cashier's return to his station represented one of the most challenging performances of his entire professional career, maintaining the facade of normalcy while his internal world had been completely shattered by what he had just witnessed. His hands moved through the familiar motions of scanning items, counting change and processing transactions, but these routine actions now felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who still believed in the comfortable illusions that had been destroyed just moments before. The mechanical precision with which he performed his duties became a shield against the chaos of emotions threatening to overwhelm him: anger, disappointment, betrayal, and a profound sense of foolishness that made him question every interaction he had ever had in that ambiente professional. The customers who approached his register had no idea they were being served by someone whose entire understanding of workplace relationships had just been fundamentally altered. His professional mask remained intact, but behind it, a storm of realization was reshaping everything he thought he knew about trust, mentorship, and human nature. The silencio that consumed him wasn't just the absence of sound, but the presence of a profound internal reckoning that demanded all of his mental and emotional energy. While his body continued to function in the familiar rhythm of retail work, his mind was processing the devastating implications of the scene he had witnessed in the stockroom. Every memory of the past week was being re-examined and recontextualized. Her expressions of gratitude, her apparent vulnerability, her eager acceptance of his guidance and protection. What had seemed like authentic appreciation and genuine need for help now revealed itself as a sophisticated strategy of manipulation and exploitation. The confianza he had felt in his ability to read people and understand their motivations had been completely undermined, leaving him questioning not just this particular relationship, but his entire approach to professional interactions and his capacity for sound judgment in workplace situations. The internal storm of emotions threatened to break through his professional composure at any moment, but years of experience in customer service had taught him how to compartmentalize personal feelings and maintain the appearance of normalcy even under extreme stress. Each transaction became an exercise in self-control, each polite interaction with customers a test of his ability to function despite the psychological upheaval occurring beneath the surface. The routine questions about store policies, product locations, and pricing became anchors that kept him grounded in the present moment, preventing him from being completely consumed by the anger and frustration that were building inside him. He found himself grateful for the mindless nature of his tasks, the way they provided structure and purpose when his internal world felt like it was collapsing. The familiar environment of the store, which had always been a source of comfort and identity, now felt like a stage where elaborate deceptions were being performed right under his nose. The weight of keeping his devastating discovery to himself added another layer of complexity to his emotional state. He was not only processing his own betrayal, but also carrying the burden of knowledge that could potentially affect other people's perceptions and relationships within the workplace. The isolation he felt was profound. He couldn't share his shock and disappointment with colleagues without potentially creating workplace drama or compromising his own professional standing. This enforced silencio became both a protection and a prison, allowing him to maintain his dignity while forcing him to bear the full weight of his disillusionment alone. The irony wasn't lost on him that the very discretion and maturity that made him a valuable employee were now preventing him from seeking the support and validation he desperately needed. The ambiente professional that had always felt like a second home now felt like a theater where everyone was playing roles, and nothing was quite what it seemed. As the minutes passed, his initial shock began to crystallize into a clearer understanding of what had actually transpired over the past week, and what it meant for his future interactions within the company. The realization that he had been systematically manipulated by someone he had tried to help wasn't just personally hurtful. It was professionally humiliating in a way that challenged his self-image as an experienced, savvy employee who understood how things really worked. The lealtad he had felt toward her development and success now seemed like naive foolishness, and the pride he had taken in his mentoring abilities felt like self-deception. Yet within this painful reassessment of recent events, he was also beginning to recognize patterns and warning signs that he had missed, insights that could protect him from similar manipulation in the future. The aprendizado that was emerging from this betrayal, while painful, was already beginning to reshape his understanding of workplace dynamics and professional relationships. The profound silencio that characterized his internal state during those hours at the register represented more than just shock or disappointment. It was the space where wisdom is born from painful experience, where naive assumptions are replaced by hard-earned insights about human nature and professional survival. He was learning that genuine kindness and strategic manipulation can sometimes look identical on the surface, and that the ability to distinguish between them is a crucial skill in any competitive professional environment. The trust he had placed in his own judgment was being rebuilt on a more solid foundation of skepticism and discernment. This internal transformation was happening beneath a surface of professional competence and customer service excellence, invisible to everyone around him but fundamentally altering his approach to workplace relationships. The superação that would eventually emerge from this experience was already beginning to take shape in the quiet depths of his consciousness, preparing him for a more strategic and self-protective approach to professional interactions. The hours he spent in that state of internal silencio represented a crucial period of psychological processing and adaptation, where the shock of betrayal was gradually being transformed into valuable insights about workplace dynamics and human motivation. While his colleagues and customers saw only the familiar face of a competent, reliable employee, he was undergoing a fundamental shift in perspective that would influence every professional relationship he formed going forward. The decepção he felt was being metabolized into wisdom, the frustração was being channeled into determination, and the sense of foolishness was being replaced by a more sophisticated understanding of how ambitious individuals operate within corporate structures. This internal transformation, invisible to the outside world, but profound in its implications, was preparing him for a more strategic and successful approach to professional advancement and workplace relationships. The silencio that had initially felt like a burden was becoming a chrysalis, protecting the vulnerable process of learning and growth that would ultimately make him a more formidable and successful professional. Perfect. Now I'll move on to the sixth topic. Topic 6. The colleague's whispered observation cut through the veteran cashier's internal turmoil like a blade, delivering a truth so stark and undeniable that it forced him to confront the full scope of what had been orchestrated right under his nose. She's not foolish. She's already climbed 2 steps in 7 days. These words weren't just casual workplace gossip. They were the voice of someone who had been watching the same drama unfold, but with clearer eyes and fewer illusions about human nature, in competitive professional environments. The colleague's tone carried the weight of experience, the knowing resignation of someone who had seen this particular game played out many times before in various forms and contexts. This wasn't the first time ambitious newcomers had used strategic relationships to accelerate their advancement, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. The casual way this insight was delivered suggested that what felt like a devastating personal betrayal to the veteran cashier was actually a fairly predictable pattern that others had recognized and understood from the beginning. The phrase, "already climbed 2 steps in 7 days," hit him with the force of mathematical precision, quantifying what he had interpreted as genuine professional development and revealing it as calculated advancement through strategic relationship building. In just 1 week, she had gone from unknown newcomer to someone with obvious connections to upper management, from entry-level employee to someone positioned for rapid promotion within the company hierarchy. The veteran cashier realized that while he had been focused on teaching her the basics of customer service and workplace procedures, she had been conducting a master class in corporate advancement through carefully cultivated relationships and strategic positioning. The confianza he had placed in his understanding of her motivations and character now felt like naive self-deception, while her apparent gratitude and vulnerability revealed themselves as sophisticated tools of manipulation designed to achieve specific professional objectives. The colleague's observation forced him to re-examine every interaction from the past week through the lens of strategic calculation rather than genuine connection or professional development. Her expressions of gratitude, her apparent nervousness, her eager acceptance of his guidance, all of these behaviors took on new meaning when viewed as components of a larger strategy designed to identify and cultivate useful relationships within the company structure. The 2 steps she had climbed weren't just about job titles or salary increases. They represented access to information, influence, and opportunities that would normally take months or years to achieve through conventional means. The veteran cashier began to understand that his role in her advancement hadn't been that of mentor or protector, but rather that of an unwitting facilitator who had provided credibility, introductions, and social capital that she had then leveraged for her own professional benefit. The casual cruelty of the colleague's assessment, delivered with the matter-of-fact tone of someone commenting on the weather, revealed how common this type of workplace manipulation had become, and how quickly experienced employees could recognize and categorize it. The phrase, "she's not foolish," contained within it an implicit criticism of anyone who had been taken in by her performance, suggesting that the signs of strategic behavior had been visible to those who knew how to look for them. This realization added another layer of frustration to the veteran cashier's emotional state. Not only had he been manipulated, but his manipulation had been transparent to colleagues who had chosen not to warn him or intervene. The ambiente professional that he had always viewed as a community of mutual support suddenly revealed itself as a more complex ecosystem, where individuals were expected to navigate deception and strategic behavior on their own, without necessarily being able to count on protection or guidance from others. The mathematical precision of 2 steps in 7 days highlighted the efficiency with which strategic individuals could navigate corporate structures when they understood how to leverage human psychology and workplace dynamics. While the veteran cashier had been focused on her professional development and integration into the company culture, she had been focused on advancement opportunities and relationship building that could accelerate her career trajectory. The colleague's observation made it clear that her success wasn't based on exceptional performance or remarkable aptitude for the work. It was based on her ability to identify and cultivate relationships with people who could influence her professional advancement. This distinction between merit-based and relationship-based advancement struck at the heart of his beliefs about fairness and professional achievement, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about how success is actually achieved in many corporate environments. The whispered comment also revealed the existence of an informal network of workplace observers who were tracking and analyzing the strategic behaviors of their colleagues, creating a kind of parallel commentary on the official narrative of professional development and advancement. The colleague who made the observation had clearly been watching the situation unfold with a level of detachment and analytical perspective that allowed them to see patterns and motivations that the veteran cashier had missed. This suggested that workplace relationships existed on multiple levels simultaneously: the surface level of official interactions and stated purposes, and the deeper level of strategic positioning and competitive advantage that was often invisible to those who weren't actively looking for it. The lealtad he had felt toward her success now seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford in an environment where such strategic thinking was apparently commonplace and expected. The colleague's assessment forced him to confront the possibility that his own long tenure at the company, his focus on traditional values like hard work and helping others, and his faith in the importance of genuine relationships had actually made him vulnerable to exactly this type of strategic manipulation. The 2 steps in 7 days represented not just her advancement, but also his education in the realities of modern workplace dynamics and the need for more sophisticated approaches to professional relationships and career development. The decepção, he felt, was beginning to transform into valuable aprendizado about the importance of maintaining professional boundaries, the need to balance generosity with self-protection, and the crucial skill of distinguishing between authentic connection and strategic manipulation. This moment of harsh truth, delivered in a casual whisper, was becoming the catalyst for a fundamental shift in his approach to workplace relationships and professional advancement, preparing him for the superação that would ultimately make him more successful and strategic in his own career trajectory. The next day arrived with an atmosphere that felt simultaneously familiar and completely transformed, as if the same workplace had been recontextualized by the devastating revelations of the previous afternoon. She walked through the door with that same bright smile that had become her trademark during the past week, the expression of cheerful confidence that had originally seemed like evidence of successful integration and growing comfort in her new professional environment. But now that smile carried entirely different meanings. It was no longer the innocent joy of someone grateful for help and support, but rather the satisfied confidence of someone whose strategic planning had achieved exactly the desired results. The veteran cashier watched her approach with the detached clarity that comes from having illusions stripped away, seeing her not as the vulnerable newcomer he had tried to protect, but as the calculating strategist she had always been. The confianza he had once felt in his ability to read people and understand their motivations had been replaced by a hard-earned skepticism that allowed him to see her performance for what it really was. When she greeted him with her customary warmth and apparent gratitude, the veteran cashier felt the full weight of his week-long education in workplace manipulation and strategic relationship building. Her words of thanks, her expressions of appreciation, her references to his helpfulness, all of these familiar behaviors now revealed themselves as carefully maintained elements of a performance designed to keep him invested in her success and willing to continue providing support and protection. The ambiente professional that had felt like a community of mutual assistance just days before now felt like a stage where elaborate deceptions were being performed by actors who understood their roles far better than he had understood his own. The realization that he had been participating in a drama without knowing the script, playing a supporting role in someone else's advancement strategy, brought with it a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and grudging admiration for the sophistication of her approach to professional advancement. His response to her greeting was measured and deliberate, crafted with the precision of someone who had spent hours processing betrayal and calculating the most appropriate way to acknowledge what had transpired without creating unnecessary workplace drama or compromising his own professional standing. "I introduced you to everyone, less the part that hurts." These words carried multiple layers of meaning. They were simultaneously an accusation and an education, a statement of fact and a warning for the future. The phrase acknowledged what he had done for her while also making it clear that his understanding of the situation had fundamentally changed. It was his way of letting her know that the game was over, that her performance had been recognized and cataloged, and that future interactions would be conducted on entirely different terms. The careful construction of this response revealed that his painful education in workplace dynamics was already beginning to transform him into a more strategic and self-protective professional. The reference to the part that hurts encompassed both the personal pain of betrayal and the broader recognition that workplace relationships often contain hidden dimensions of competition, manipulation, and strategic positioning that can cause real damage to those who approach them with naive good intentions. He was acknowledging that his introductions and guidance had been incomplete. He had shown her the official structure of the workplace, the formal relationships and procedures, but he had failed to prepare her for, or recognize that she already understood, the informal networks of influence and strategic behavior that often determined real success and advancement. The irony wasn't lost on him that she had needed no introduction to the part that hurts, because she had come prepared to navigate and exploit exactly those hidden dynamics that he had been too idealistic or inexperienced to recognize. His statement was both an admission of his own limitations and a declaration that those limitations would no longer define his approach to professional relationships. The months that followed this pivotal conversation became a laboratory for testing new approaches to workplace dynamics and professional advancement, as the veteran cashier applied the hard-earned lessons of his experience with strategic manipulation and calculated betrayal. Her transfer to another location and the district manager's subsequent disappearance confirmed what he had already begun to understand, that their relationship had been part of a larger pattern of strategic advancement that would continue to play out in different contexts and with different participants throughout their respective careers. The frustration and deception he had initially felt were gradually transformed into valuable insights about the nature of professional relationships and the importance of maintaining appropriate boundaries between genuine helpfulness and naive vulnerability. His promotion to assistant manager represented not just professional advancement, but vindication of his decision to learn from betrayal rather than be destroyed by it. When colleagues asked about the secret of his newfound success and strategic acumen, his response revealed the wisdom that had been distilled from his painful education in workplace realities and human nature. Start by helping, but learn when to stop. This advice captured the delicate balance between maintaining one's humanity and generosity while protecting oneself from exploitation and manipulation in competitive professional environments. It acknowledged that helping others could still be valuable and meaningful, but only when it was done with clear boundaries and realistic expectations about motivations and reciprocity. The phrase represented a mature understanding of professional relationships that incorporated both the idealistic desire to support others and the practical necessity of self-protection in environments where strategic behavior and calculated advancement were commonplace. This hard-earned wisdom would serve him well throughout the remainder of his career, allowing him to maintain his essential humanity while avoiding the kind of naive vulnerability that had made him susceptible to manipulation. The transformation from naive mentor to strategic professional represented a form of super-assume that was both personally meaningful and professionally valuable, demonstrating how devastating experiences can be converted into practical wisdom and competitive advantage. The apprendizado that emerged from his week of manipulation and betrayal became the foundation for a more sophisticated approach to workplace relationships, one that balanced genuine desire to help others with realistic assessment of motivations and careful protection of his own interests and advancement opportunities. His story became a testament to the possibility of learning and growing from even the most painful professional experiences, showing how betrayal and disappointment could be transformed into strength, wisdom, and ultimately success. The lealtad he now showed was reserved for those who had proven themselves worthy of trust through consistent actions rather than appealing performances, and the confianza he placed in others was earned through demonstrated integrity rather than granted automatically based on apparent need or vulnerability. Perfect. Now I'll move on to the eighth and final topic. Topic 8. The months that followed the revelation became a masterclass in the complex dynamics of workplace justice and professional karma, as the various players in this drama of manipulation and strategic advancement found their carefully constructed plans either validated or completely dismantled by forces beyond their immediate control. Her transfer to another location wasn't necessarily a punishment or consequence of her strategic behavior. Corporate transfers often serve multiple purposes, from providing fresh opportunities for advancement to quietly resolving situations that might create ongoing complications or workplace tensions. The veteran cashier watched this development with the detached interest of someone who had learned to read between the lines of corporate communications and understand the subtle ways that companies manage personnel issues without explicitly acknowledging problems or assigning blame. The confianza he now placed in his ability to interpret workplace dynamics had been earned through painful experience and careful observation of how strategic behavior ultimately played out in the larger context of corporate culture and professional relationships. The district manager's sudden disappearance from the company added another layer of complexity to the narrative, raising questions about whether his involvement in workplace relationships had created complications that extended beyond simple romantic entanglements or professional favoritism. Corporate hierarchies have their own mechanisms for addressing situations that might create liability, embarrassment, or disruption to normal business operations, and the timing of his departure suggested that upper management had become aware of dynamics that needed to be quietly resolved. The veteran cashier found himself wondering how much of what he had witnessed was part of a larger pattern of inappropriate behavior, and whether his own painful education in workplace manipulation had been just one episode in a much more extensive drama of professional misconduct and strategic exploitation. The ambiente professional that had seemed so stable and predictable just months before was revealing itself as a complex ecosystem where individual actions could have far-reaching consequences that weren't always immediately visible or understood. His promotion to assistant manager represented the most tangible and satisfying outcome of this entire experience. Validation that his years of dedicated service and newly acquired strategic awareness had positioned him for advancement opportunities that might not have been available if he had remained in his previous role and mindset. The irony wasn't lost on him that the painful lessons learned through betrayal and manipulation had actually accelerated his own professional development in ways that conventional mentorship or training programs never could have achieved. His new position came with increased responsibility, better compensation, and most importantly, a deeper understanding of how workplace relationships and corporate advancement actually functioned beneath the surface of official policies and procedures. The lealtad he now inspired in subordinates was based on demonstrated competence and earned respect rather than naive generosity or misplaced trust, creating a foundation for professional relationships that were both more authentic and more strategically sound. The colleagues who inquired about his sudden transformation from helpful but overlooked veteran employee to strategically savvy manager were witnessing the results of accelerated learning that had been catalyzed by the shock of recognizing how thoroughly he had been manipulated and exploited. His response to their questions, "Start by helping, but learn when to stop," became a kind of professional philosophy that balanced the genuine desire to support others with the practical necessity of self-protection in competitive workplace environments. This wisdom represented the distillation of months of reflection and analysis, during which he had examined every aspect of his experience and extracted practical lessons that could guide future decisions and relationships. The frustration and deception that had initially consumed him had been transformed into valuable insights about human nature, professional advancement, and the complex motivations that drive behavior in corporate settings, where individual success often comes at the expense of others. The phrase "learn when to stop" contained within it a sophisticated understanding of professional boundaries and strategic thinking that went far beyond simple self-protection or cynical withdrawal from workplace relationships. It acknowledged that helping others could still be meaningful and valuable, but only when it was done with clear awareness of motivations, realistic expectations about reciprocity, and careful attention to the potential consequences of generosity in environments where some individuals would inevitably exploit kindness for their own advancement. This represented a mature integration of idealistic impulses with practical wisdom, allowing him to maintain his essential humanity while avoiding the kind of naive vulnerability that had made him susceptible to manipulation. The balance between generosity and self-interest that he had achieved was both personally satisfying and professionally effective, creating a model for workplace relationships that other employees began to observe and emulate. His journey from naive mentor to strategic professional had become a template for how individuals could learn from painful experiences and transform them into competitive advantages and leadership capabilities. The apprendizado that emerged from his confrontation with workplace manipulation wasn't just about avoiding future betrayals. It was about developing the kind of sophisticated understanding of human motivation and professional dynamics that could be used to build more effective teams, create more authentic relationships, and achieve more meaningful success. His promotion represented validation that companies valued employees who could demonstrate both genuine care for others and strategic awareness of competitive realities. The confianza he now inspired was based on a combination of proven competence and hard-earned wisdom that made him an effective leader and a valuable mentor for employees who were serious about their own professional development and advancement. The transformation represented by his promotion and newfound strategic acumen demonstrated the possibility of converting even the most painful professional experiences into opportunities for growth, learning, and ultimately, greater success. His story became proof that betrayal and disappointment, while initially devastating, could serve as catalysts for the kind of deep learning and character development that distinguish truly effective leaders from those who relied solely on technical competence or corporate politics. The super-ascent he achieved wasn't just about recovering from manipulation or achieving professional advancement. It was about developing the wisdom and strategic thinking necessary to navigate complex workplace relationships while maintaining integrity and authentic care for others. His success served as inspiration for colleagues who faced their own challenges with workplace dynamics and professional advancement, showing that it was possible to learn from difficult experiences and emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable of achieving meaningful professional success. Don't let another week pass where you might be unknowingly facilitating someone else's strategic advancement at your own expense. Subscribe to this channel and activate notifications to continue learning about the hidden dynamics that determine professional success and failure. The next story might be the one that saves you from your own generosity or teaches you how to turn your natural kindness into your greatest professional strength.